Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mackenzie. Hi, Angela, long time no see. Hi, Joe. Hi, Greg. Hi, Cynthia. And Candace, everybody. So many familiar faces. We're going to give people just a few more minutes to come in. I think we have just about 20 registered. And so once we get everybody here into the room, then we will go ahead and get started. Hi, Hannah and Megan. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay.
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome.
Perfect. Hi, Kathy. We'll give people until about 1:03, 1:04, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to pass it over to the fabulous Family Services team at that time. Hi, Cecil. How are you? Okay.
Doing great. How are you?
Good. I'll see you tomorrow, right?
Oh, yes.
I'll see you tomorrow morning.
I got some other updates for you too. We'll talk about those later. But
Okay.
got some approvals from Dr. Morrow.
Okay.
Excited to share with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I can stay on a little bit longer on our call tomorrow if we need to.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a good portion of everybody here, I believe. So I think I know most of you, but my name is Decca Knight, and I do lots of things around the Valley, but one of the things that I'm really passionate about is the work that we do on the Gun Violence Commission. And I see that, oh, Joe's here. Hi, Joe. Are you able to say hi? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe not. So on the commission, we had a big task over the past year and a half of trying to put together a social emotional learning curricula for our youth partners here in the Valley. And actually on the education committee of the commission, we looked at a lot of different curriculas. We had a lot of people do a lot of research and nothing fit exactly with what we wanted to do. And so what we decided was that we would partner with Family Services to develop a curricula that really is just for our Valley. And they have been wonderful enough to work really, really hard on that over the past few months and came up with an amazing curricula. I have had the pleasure of seeing it, and I'm excited for you all to see it as well. They are going to spend a little bit of time with us today, just kind of going over the bones of the curricula and kind of the different aspects of it. We had some specific things that as a commission and as an education committee that we asked Family Services to incorporate. And the great thing is that this curricula is for kindergarten all the way through high school. A lot of the curricula that we looked at, was for just a certain age group, and we took all the best pieces of a lot of these different curricula and said, this is what we want. We want to focus on this aspect of social emotional learning specifically. So once we are able to discuss this curricula today, then we should be able to send it out to all of you so that you guys can use it in all of your programming. But just know that I can be the contact and kind of the conduit to our friends at Family Services if you have any questions or concerns or anything's unclear. So I'm going to pass it over to our Family Services partners who worked so hard on putting this curricula together. So I'm passing it over to you guys in the boardroom.
Thank you, Decca. Well, hello, virtually. Hi, hello, everybody. My name is Megan Alpine, and I am the program coordinator for youth development here at Family Service. And then I have the wonderful Hannah Mills, who is one of our youth development specialists. So Hannah was a very key member in helping our youth development team put together the curriculum that we're going to present. So the whole youth development team worked really hard in, as Decca said, picking out all the best parts from all the wonderful programs that we have available to us to put this whole thing together. So we're really excited to go over that with you all today. All right, so without further ado, we'll get started.
Give me just 1 second.
In just a second, sorry.
Oh, I can't hear you, Decca.
Did you guys want to share the curricula from your screen? Do you want us to make you co-host, or would you like me to share it?
We have a presentation and also
Okay.
a set of curricula.
Okay.
Did you want to share that out as well?
Yeah, so we can, let me make sure. Angie, can you make them co-hosts?
I've made it possible that they can share their screen,
Okay.
but if I need to make you co-host, I can certainly do that as well.
Thank you.
All right. So for the co-host, is that to share also the curriculum packet? Just a quick question. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
You want me to share that for you all?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, let me pull it up.
And I will share our screen and we can get started. Oh, okay. Here we go.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. All right.
All right, are we ready to get started on this? All right. So, starting with,
Okay, so what we are going to cover today is, as Decca said, the kind of the bones of this curriculum. So we created it for, there's an elementary.
Megan, it's kind of hard for us to hear you. Is there any way you can like come closer to the,
Oh,
can your hand?
sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
No worries. Is this any better?
Much better.
Much better. Okay, perfect. All right. So we split this up, as you can see, into elementary, middle school, and high school. For the elementary, we did split that up even further into a K through first grade, and then a third through fifth grade, just because as we were piloting things, there's definitely, we could tell just the developmental differences, even with just kind of like motor skills and things like that. So some of the elementary school activities involved writing. And I think when we first tried to do that with kindergartners, as we all know, that was unsuccessful. So anyway, you'll see that the elementary curriculum is broken up into kind of those two parts to split that up for the younger and older elementary school. And as we're going over this, there are, while we'll be going over each lesson, these three specific ones are going to be ones that we try to get into a little bit more in depth, just to kind of show an example of how we facilitate these lessons. All right, so the purpose of this curriculum is to provide our community partners with a resource for social and emotional skill building for youth. The topics that are covered within this curricula is emotional regulation, communication skills, recognizing, creating, and fostering healthy relationships, recognizing and responding to social injustices, and developing a positive sense of self. All right, so just briefly, so what even is social and emotional learning? It is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. And how this ties into gun violence prevention is when considering the effects of practicing emotional regulation, we find that all age groups benefit from this. Social and emotional regulation can teach healthy or protective skills that youth and adults alike can use. So for example, when you are building your social emotional skills, you can learn that, like for this example here, so rather than an adolescent hitting a peer when upset or overwhelmed, social and emotional regulation skills can help the youth to learn how to self-regulate and therefore make the choice to use healthy coping skills instead. So we link that as just social emotional learning to as a way for building protective factors for our youth as they are learning and developing, and hopefully can then make positive choices later on in their childhood. All right, so we will start going over what this actually looks like. So for our elementary school curriculum, lessons 1 through 3 cover emotional awareness, emotional regulation, and healthy emotional outlets. So what that looks like when we are modeling this to really little ones, it's that we're helping them learn like what emotions feel like. So that's going to be a lot of how that feels in their body, so that they're able to start identifying, okay, when I start feeling this way in my body, that means I'm feeling upset. So helping them learn how to link that with what they're feeling inside to how they're showing that and expressing that outside. And then instead of, like hitting or yelling outbursts, things like that, what are some healthy ways that a really little one could channel their emotions? All right, so lesson 4, when we go into the elementary school portion, and this is going to be for both. So we modeled it's the same headings for the kindergarten through 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and then 4th through 5th. We follow the same lessons 1 through 8 are going to be fairly similar. So for lesson 4, we talk about self-efficacy. With little ones, we instill that it's kind of a you can do it attitude about yourself, and helping them learn that how we can see failure as an opportunity for learning and growth rather than as something, a negative thing to feel ashamed about. Self-efficacy, when we're talking about that with little ones, also looks like learning how to advocate for themselves. It starts building and fostering a sense of self-confidence and having a strong sense of self and their own identity. Lesson 5, we start talking about communication skills, how miscommunication can happen in our daily lives and how miscommunication can make us feel. And then also kind of always linking that in with, if you're feeling frustrated with miscommunication, what's a healthy coping skill you can use to express that instead? And then how we can start practicing effective communication. Lesson 6, we introduce healthy relationships and boundaries. This starts with, we start by defining and exploring the different types of relationships there are. So that could be their familial relationships, romantic, platonic, and what each of those things mean. So it's really cute. We get a lot of ew at the romantic ones. So it's always nice to remind them that when we're talking about relationships, it's not necessarily dating ones. We can talk about the relationships that they have with their families, guardians, and then with their friends. So in all of those different scopes, they should have healthy relationships in any of those. So whether they're family, if they have any for like 5th graders, if they're dating anybody, or even in friendships, what those healthy relationships look like, what they feel like, sound like. We start introducing what boundaries mean, and then along with that, what boundaries look, feel, and sound like. And we reinforce this theme of self-advocacy to uphold those boundaries for safe and healthy relationships. So even when you're working with kindergartners and 1st graders, there is still a way, there's still language to use to help them start learning this and developing what they feel that their personal boundaries are. So that's when we're talking about, like my personal space bubble and things like that. There's always ways where you can start teaching even really little kids about that and how they can speak up for themselves. Okay, so moving on into lesson 7 for elementary school, that is community. So we define what a community is, so how that relates to them. So that could be their neighborhood, their schools, things like that. We start helping them learn about what their communities provide, how they can contribute to their community, even, in their young ages, like what that looks like for them. And then we start talking about what that means to be a good citizen in our community. All right, so lesson 8, we talk about your future, we start them thinking on their future planning for their future selves. We encourage discussion about what you plan to do in the future. As you go through the curriculum, you'll see we've tried to make things as interactive as possible. So it's not just us talking at them. So you'll see we've got these links for YouTube videos. And they're all age appropriate. So we were really careful in what we selected for each different age group. So there's, you'll find that you'll see these YouTube videos that we've chosen to kind of help breaking up the talking at them aspect. So we've got this YouTube video. And with this, after they watch it, we're practicing visualizing a career choice that they choose by drawing it. So that's really formal language, when you're working with the kindergartners and first graders. You'll see it's just like draw a picture of what you think you want to do or what you want to be when you grow up, kind of those fun questions to get them to start thinking about it, and really just encouraging them to be creative and nurturing their dreams. So nothing is silly or outlandish or anything like that. Like at this young age, we want them to still have a lot of hope for themselves. And I think the whole goal is that we help them protect having that hope and those dreams for themselves, even as they get older and, the world and life happens. We want to help them learn how they can protect those big dreams for themselves. And then they'll kind of talk about what they've chosen, discuss their artwork with their peers. And, as you are going through this, you want to encourage, like I said, like no dream is too big or too small. We want to encourage diverse career paths amongst them, and just really encourage them to be creative. Okay. All right. So we are going to take a little bit of a deeper dive. So this is in the kindergarten through first grade, lesson 2. So we're kind of going to go over a little bit more in terms of modeling that for you all, how we would do this in an actual group setting. I will say it is always nice, whether you're working with elementary, middle, or high school. It is always nice in probably that first group that you start doing to have some type of discussion on group guidelines. So like I said, even with really little ones, you can, if they're in kindergarten, they know about like classroom expectations and things like that. So don't be afraid, even with really little ones, you do want to make sure you're having some type of discussion. Normally we have like our kind of poster paper or some Sharpies, and we ask our groups what they want our group setting to look like. So you're gonna, as they answer, it's always nice to write things down so that they have a visual. You also have something that you can refer back to if you need to help manage group behaviors. So you're basically encouraging things such as one person talking at a time, good listening ears, keeping your hands and body to yourself, things like that. So that's all I do. Just want to play that out for in your first group. That's always a really good idea to go over group guidelines and have that discussion. Okay. I feel like I've talked a lot. So before we get into this, was there any questions or anything that anybody had so far?
Megan, I think you're still kind of cutting out sometimes, out and in with sound. So I don't know what's happening. I don't know. You have to get super, super close. So sometimes we can hear you really, really clearly, and sometimes it's kind of hard to hear you. I'm not sure why. But yeah, any questions that anybody has, and I'll read some to you from the chat too, Megan. Or chat.
Okay, I feel kind of bad. I feel like I don't mean to speak. Is this better for people?
Okay.
That sounds a little bit better. Yeah.
Okay, I am really sorry about that. Decca, feel free to unmute and let me know because I feel like I'm kind of just like in the zone.
Okay.
So feel free to unmute
Yeah.
and let me know if I'm cutting out.
It's okay.
Also, Hannah, if I'm shouting.
You
in
were on
your
a
ear.
roll, so I didn't want to stop you.
No, please do. And I'm just saying sorry for Hannah that I'm like
Okay.
shouting directly in her ear. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Hi, this is Angela. So how is the plan, or what is the plan, and I might have missed it, so forgive me, to actually roll this out? Like, is the school system going to get involved? Or teachers going to be trained? Is this going to be something that all of Roanoke Valley is going to, buy into? Just a lot of different questions around how we plan on getting this out here. I love the idea that it's starting from kindergarten on. And that's what's making me think more of the school system. But I was just trying to get an idea, especially because it looks like we're going from topics based on their age appropriateness and kind of what they're going through, like especially when I looked at middle school relationships and things of that nature. So it seems like it's a curriculum that's building on. And that's why I felt like it would be important, or just wanted to know how much the school teachers are buying into this, and would this become a part of their curriculum?
So those are all great questions. I do just want to point out, and I probably should have mentioned this in the beginning, so I apologize. So I understand we're using the terms such as, elementary, middle, and high school. We do mostly mean that as just like an age range. So when we were piloting this, as we were creating and developing the curriculum, we did this at our after school sites. So I apologize, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. It does not necessarily have to be within the school system.
Okay,
Yeah.
so hearing that, one other question, would this be something that could also be privy as far as Head Start, and starting with some of those littler ones that have some of the behavior issues because they don't know how to express what they're feeling?
Sure, absolutely.
Great idea.
I do.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Angela, so they had Family Services had actually piloted this in their after school program. So what they did is they created
Okay.
the curricula, and then they piloted. How many months was it, Megan?
I want to say about 3.
I want to say about 3 months. Yes.
About 3 months in all their after school programming, and then made some edits, based on the feedback that they got from teachers in those after school programs and from the kiddos. And so our initial purpose from the education committee was to have it in our after school programs and to send it out to all of the gun violence youth partners. But I don't. This is just something
You're
that's
freezing.
been developed. Is free to any community partners.
Okay.
Sorry, Decca, can you repeat that? You were cutting in and out.
Yeah, we're all freezing for some
Yeah.
reason.
We're all freezing today. It's one of those days. So this was developed just for the youth community partners, but it doesn't mean that it can't go into the school system at some point. And it is a free curriculum for all of our partners. So that's why it was funded in the way that it was, so that it can just be offered out to the community. But we just started it with the pilot in the after school programs, and then hopefully we'll be able to push it out from there once we see how it goes over these first few months with our partners using it. Did you hear me that time? Yeah, okay.
How will this work in a dance studio setting?
Hmm.
That's an interesting question. It's a great question. I believe as you go, especially if you've been with your students, and the more rapport you build with them, you'll know how to gauge the room and your group dynamics and how that can work best for you and your students.
Is like in a dance studio, if we're talking about, like, are we talking about kind of like how and where they would sit, things like that? Is that what we mean? I think that's kind of what Hannah.
I'm sorry. So yeah, because my name is Miss Chalet White. I own Miss Schmooze Dance Company here in Roanoke, Virginia. So we teach ages 3 up to 18. So all throughout. So I'm trying to figure like how would this work in like in our setting? And I know how you was mentioning as far as emotions and everything, which is kind of what we do. You know, we do dance classes, but we also have like where they just have a time where they just relax and express their feelings and everything too. So how will this help with that? Because this for me working in the studio, these kids are going through so much, and you know, we're seeing so much, you know, emotions and things to them. So how will this work through that?
Well, I mean, I definitely think it can be done. I think that's what Hannah was saying. You would learn how, like, based off of your group dynamics, you kind of learn how to work the room to best suit your needs. You could, if you're having your dance class, I think you can definitely adapt these lessons in terms of a time frame you're looking at. So the groups that we typically do are at least like 30 to 45 minutes. However, if your dance class is usually that long, I think there's parts of each lesson where you could definitely adapt it and set some time aside where you would be able to kind of get to the heart of the lesson, especially like emotional regulation and things like that. So I think you would just need to kind of first determine what amount of time you have to work with, like after your dance class or even before, if it's a way to help kind of get the kids to split center themselves and be ready to be in the headspace to focus on the dance lesson. So whether you'd have to kind of gauge your group dynamics on if it's best to do before or after the dance lesson. And I think you could adapt each thing if you needed to just do it in a smaller chunk of time. Does that help?
Okay.
Did that answer your
Yes,
question?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank
We
you.
had another question. So someone said, what is the timeline for this program and what is the length of the lesson sessions? So this, like we said, we've piloted this within a 3-month span, and that wasn't in like consecutive order. We each took turns taking it to different locations just to see what kind of feedback we could get. And so I believe this could also go either from a semester to a whole year, depending on if you're just using this in Singularity or if you're also pairing it with something else. So I think it could be extended if need be.
Mm-hmm. So in general, like I said, the lessons are typically probably going to be about 30 to 45 minutes. If you're solely meeting with a group to do these lessons, but not if you're doing it within like a dance class time frame. If you're solely meeting for group to do these lessons, I would set aside about 30 to 45 minutes. And I think for each section, so with elementary, middle, and high school, there's typically about 8 to 9 lessons. So if you're meeting with a group just once a week, that would be 8 weeks. If you're meeting with them twice a week, 4 weeks, things like that. So it would just kind of depend on the timeline you are working with.
Let's see, we had another.
And Angela, I just briefly read that, like several times. That's a great suggestion for the dance class.
Yes. Okay.
All right, so I'll kind of move forward with this lesson 2 for K through First. This is emotions and empathy. So in this lesson, the youth begin with an icebreaker activity in which they choose an emoji card to describe their emotion for that day. And this can be done in a smaller, large group setting. So you can print this out. You can print this one out. I think we have one included in the curriculum that you can also go on to. There's several like free templates on Pinterest or Google Images, things like that. So you would just print it out beforehand and cut it up and kind of lay it out and have them look through and pick one. You can create some discussion on, does anyone want to volunteer to say which card they chose and why, and just kind of have that be a way where you can all connect to each other and get everyone in the headspace for a group discussion and or activity. So that's how that one starts. All right, so this one, there is a YouTube video that you play. All right, so the YouTube video, it also demonstrates this hand model of the brain. if you're at all familiar with social emotional learning, you might have seen this before. This is the whole concept of the flipping your lid. This goes over really well with kids, and it's a really good way to demonstrate how the brain works for really little ones. Even I, as an adult, appreciate this demonstration because sometimes all the different parts of the brain leave my brain. So for me, this flipping your lid is something that has really stuck with me. And it's a way to kind of show where the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, like how those things work, and then what happens when they start to feel any type of positive or negative energy or emotions that causes them to escalate. Because even positive energy, such as like feeling really energetic, hyper, things like that, that can also cause an escalation. It doesn't always have to be a negative behavior. But so this really describes what happens when like your lid is flipped, and then what you can do to calm your body back down. So for example, when we're talking with little ones, that can look like trying to teach them how to do those deep breathing techniques. So part of what I tie into that works nicely with the flipping your lid is I ask them to put up their birthday candles, like imagine their fingers as birthday candles, and then like kind of flicker them and then blow out their birthday candles. So I like to do that to practice deep breathing. You can also use pinwheels if you have access to those to practice deep breathing. That can look, so we also have like time alone for reflection. So maybe there's like a calm down corner. Just to clarify, this is not sending them into any type of timeout or anything like that. But if there's like a little calm down corner that you have where they just need to have some space by themselves. Sometimes with little ones, it does look like an outward display of affection. So maybe like the kind of side arm hug, if appropriate, a pat on the back, things like that. If they need a snack, if they need something to drink, we know with little ones, especially not knowing kind of what their home life is like. Sometimes you can link any type of outburst back to the fact that they just don't know where their next like snack or something to drink is going to, where that's going to come from. And then sometimes they just need to rest. So trying to teach them like what that can look like to help them calm their bodies down. All right, so that was a kind of a more in-depth look at one of our lessons instead of just, going bare bones through everything. So that's typically how we would go through actual facilitation of that lesson. All right, so that kind of concludes the elementary school portion. Again, like we aligned it pretty similarly between the kindergarten and first, second and third, and then fourth and fifth. Just the activities are different, just to have that be more developmentally and age appropriate for really, really younger elementary school students, and then, kind of the older, like fourth and fifth graders. Again, I'm just using that terminology, but it doesn't necessarily mean doing this in schools. It's just kind of thinking about that age range of, 5 and 6 year olds. The way they're going to be able to learn and do the activities is going to be different than, your 9 and 10 year olds. Okay, so any questions before we move on to the middle school? Yes, definitely me too. The hand model always makes me happy. It's one of my favorite things to do. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the middle school curriculum. This is for 6th through 8th grade, or again, just that age range of, what is that, typically like 11 to about 13. Okay, so lesson 1 is, it's just an introduction. We do have here where this is going to be a fun time just to do an icebreaker activity. We have a suggestion listed, which always goes over really well, but it's, you have a roll of toilet paper and you ask them to just pick any amount of the toilet paper, like however many squares. And then when everyone's picked whatever amount they want for however many squares of toilet paper they've picked, they have to share something about themselves. So that's always kind of amusing if someone's grabbed like a whole, like 12 squares or something like that, and they're always like, what? So that's a pretty fun one. There's lots of other icebreakers. Normally something involving names is really good. I am not the best at learning everyone's names, but I will say that I've been facilitating long enough where it definitely helps them. It helps you make more of a connection and build your rapport with them when you start learning their names. So some type of name game is always encouraged. But really, there's lots of different icebreaker activities. So whatever whatever you feel might go over well with your group. So the objective of that is to build rapport as well as set the tone for what is to come for the remaining, for the duration of your group time together. So and like I will add in this would be a great time to also create and go over group guidelines. So that's your lesson 1. Lesson 2, we go into empathy and conflict resolution. So that is the objective of that one is to teach empathy, sympathy, and conflict resolution. Even when we've done this in high school groups, not everybody always knows the difference, the definition, and even the difference between empathy and sympathy. So it's really good to start talking about that in this middle school age range. So with the one that we have for this, there's scenario cards, and we put here it's a really simple yet effective facilitation tool is to just cut up those scenario cards so that the youth can pull each one from, a hat, a bucket, a basket. It's just a little thing, but it does help to kind of make it a little bit more interactive for them. And then you just, you'd have the youth read that scenario out loud. And then you just encourage discussion around that.
And I also know when we were looking over this, there might have been some confusion with some of the scenarios. I do want to say if there's any time that a youth doesn't identify or hasn't been through a situation that is on the scenario cards, the best way that we've facilitated this is to just ask okay, well, what would you do in that situation? Or how could you help? Things like that. So it doesn't always have to be a direct linking to this specific situation for them, but a way for them to visualize and realize oh, this is empathy, this is sympathy. How can I use both of these practically? Okay. All right. So lesson 3 is self-regulation, anger management, and mindfulness techniques. The objective of this lesson is to discuss more developmentally appropriate coping skills. So like we said, rather than hitting when you're younger, maybe talk it out, breathe it out, might not be the same for middle school. So we give them more appropriate ways to have that emotional outlet in a positive way. So this example is mindfulness, which is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment. So going back to that flipping your lid example, whenever you're feeling heightened or stimulated, being able to, one, calm yourself down and make rational decisions rather than decisions based on emotion. So we're really giving them the tools how to navigate those situations. This one as well comes with a YouTube video, and it gives them a more practical look of what it actually looks and sounds like to them and how they can use it in their everyday lives. So you can also use that video to show them as well if they're still having trouble grasping it just from hearing it. Okay, then lesson 4 is learning about the brain. I think this is my favorite one. So to begin this one, you want to discuss what kind of stressors that middle school youth or that age range may face, which might be different for each student. So that could be anything from genetics, social media, drugs, alcohol, family issues, friends, anything they might be going through. So discussing that with them, having those conversations with them, opening it up, giving them the opportunity to talk freely has definitely worked in our favor. We also have some interactive videos. So we have the first video by Dan Siegel, The Adolescent Brain. It gives you a really, really good look about how the brain develops, what happens with the brain, and how these emotions link to what happens in the brain. So it's not just, oh, well, this just happens. It's like, oh, well, my brain does this, and then it creates this emotion, and I get this reaction. We also have a case study by Phineas Gage. This just gives an example of if one thing is off or not working in the brain, then it can really disrupt your whole process of thinking and the way you engage with other people. After these videos, we really want to have a discussion-based lesson. So it's really student-led. We will ask questions like what happened? What did you see in the video? What did you hear? And how would you handle the situation, or what would you do differently? And if they wouldn't do anything differently, ask them why and get their opinions about it.
And then again, so just to point out, so that Dance
Mhm.
Equals the adolescent brain, that is like, he created it for like that adolescent age to watch. So it's not a really like stiff and formal language video. It's for, it's developmentally appropriate for that age range to watch. And we really like it, like it's colorful and uses really cool fonts and pictures and things like that. So hopefully it is something that they would find engaging. When we piloted it, it did go over well. So just wanted to point that out.
Okay. So lesson 5, we really talk about our emotions more in depth. So our outside emotion and inside emotion and how we mask or put on certain masks for certain locations, people, situations we may be in. So we talk about that. We can really go into depth. So we're giving them the tools how to visualize how they may act differently when they're at school with their friends or when they're at home with their family members, or if they're at a certain like football game, things like that, any extracurricular activity. So for this activity, we would have a sheet of paper. On the front side, you talk to them about their outside faces. So that would be like the outside mask that they show to the world. And then they visualize that, they draw what that looks like to them, what that feels like to them. And then we talk about it, like, why do you put this, like, why does this happen to you? Or how do you feel when you have to do like this mask? And then we go on the flip side and do the inside mask of how they actually feel inside and like don't feel comfortable showing it to the outside world. So really helping them identify their emotions, how they're feeling those emotions in their bodies, and how they're projecting those emotions to the outside world. And going on to lesson 6, again, this follows the elementary curriculum of self-efficacy. So we really want to help the youth practice self-advocacy as well as goal setting. So a part of self-efficacy, having that you can do it attitude, seeing failure as opportunity, and being that hype man for yourself. So there's another video with
So
this one or
is-
website.
This
Yes.
one is an article.
Mhm.
This one is an article on the website. So it's not so much for you to show to your middle school age group. There is a lot to take in. So we just put that, it's helpful for you as the facilitator to read through that first. It has a really good definition of self-efficacy where it says the belief that we have in our abilities and competencies. That's just really simple, succinct. And it lists a lot of really good points in there. So we include that just for you as a facilitator to read through beforehand. I'm sorry, I see there's something in the chat. So let me just make sure we're not missing anything. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Along with this, so the interactive component for this, there's a worksheet for goal setting. For your middle school group to do, and then you can encourage discussion about that. So sometimes it's not always with your group dynamics for asking if somebody wants to share it. If that's not really your group dynamics, you can always ask them to like partner up, and they can just talk to a partner about what they've written down if they don't feel like sharing it, kind of with the larger group. You can always have them partner up, or small groups, things like that, where they can discuss either just like 1 or 2 goals that they put down. I think it's, they list like 5 goals on here. So just encourage them to think of either 1 or 2. I mean, even for myself on the spot, it's hard to think of 5 goals that I want for myself. So, we don't want to overwhelm them, just encourage them to maybe think about 1 or 2 goals, and then they can share that within a partner or small group if they don't feel like sharing it with the whole class. All right, so moving on with our lesson 7, this is love and healthy relationships. So there's a couple of YouTube videos. So the first one depicts navigating healthy relationships. The second one starts explaining boundaries to your middle school group and what boundaries and respect and healthy relationships looks and feels like. So after you are playing those videos, you want to be sure to have a reflection discussion on it, asking open-ended questions such as, what did you take away from this? How did this make you feel? Did anything in the video or videos depict any resemblances to your life? We want to play one of these?
Sure.
Okay, so we probably play the second one. We're gonna play the second one for everybody. Just, I know we keep referencing these YouTube videos. I think it'd be nice to see like some of the ones that we picked. Hannah and I both really like the second one, so I think it's just a couple minutes. So we are going to play that for you all now. Let us know if you can't hear it or anything. Okay.
Wow, you really like Laura, don't you? Yeah, she's awesome. I just hope I can be awesome too. She's my first girlfriend, so I'm really nervous. I mean, this will literally be the first year I don't take my aunt on to spring break. That's why I'm here. Let's have a talk about healthy relationships. As you get older, it's normal to feel more independent from family and closer to friends. Some friendships can develop into romantic relationships. You feel a social emotional connection, which could also be physical or sexual. Relationships can be amazing, but if they're unhealthy, they can also be complicated and stressful. So how do I know if my relationship is healthy, whether friendship or romance? Every healthy relationship is based on respect, equity, and communication. In a respectful relationship, each person is valued for who they are. So you can feel confident expressing yourself or saying no to something you disagree with without feeling judged or ignored. If someone learning to expression of being feeling not comfortable, things like lack of respect, it could be a sign of unhealthy relationship. It's also important for both people to choose equal partners. You need to cooperate and compromise together for balance while respecting each other's goals. If someone tries to control the partner or the relationship, for example, by making all the decisions or sending tons of texts to check up, it's another example. In a relationship, good communication, you feel free to say that you mean what you said. You disagree with someone, you can discuss the goal, listen to each other, and find a solution. You'll both be willing to apologize and encourage. In an unhealthy relationship, disagreements may be met with silence, or one person will try to pressure, bully, or belittle the other to the blame. The bottom line, in a healthy relationship, you feel good about it and yourself. Thanks. My relationship with Nora feels very healthy so far. Man, this spring fling is gonna be so much more fun with her this year. Oh, sorry guys.
So let's go back.
Sorry, we're just.
We're having technical difficulties here. All right.
Sorry, we're trying to go back. We are not moving on to this, just at this moment.
Okay. Perhaps
Okay, well,
it's
sorry, we lost our back button, so we don't want to exit out of it fully. Anyway, so as you can see, we tried to, to me, that video is a great example of how we try to look for things that were developmentally appropriate, age appropriate, and being mindful of, you know, different types of relationships, being inclusive to different sexual orientations, genders, things like that. Hopefully you all agree with that, but we think that's a fun video, and I like that it's fun, but it starts kind of planting those seeds on what, as you know, sort of the little heart waving that red flag. So it's important to start that discussion because I feel like our even, you know, even like younger 6th and 7th graders, they're definitely experiencing relationships for the first time, and it's important to start that discussion on what what red flags look like and what a healthy relationship should look and feel like.
So we got some chat. Yes, tech is always the issue.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing.
Hello, just making sure we don't have any questions. Okay. So are there any questions before we move on?
Hi, I have a question.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I was just curious. So when you're implementing this like 6th through 8th, so say you wanted to do this every year, is there anything different you can do, or you just do it once to the 6th graders and then hit them again in 9th grade when we get to the high school?
Oh, okay, that's a great point. So when you see them again in high school, those are gonna be, the high school will be different lessons. I see your point, like if you're doing this with the same group of kids, like for 6th, 7th, and 8th.
We went through and really tried to scaffold how we could have the same concept or topic, but also gauge that in a more age appropriate way. So the way we talk or the messages that we present to middle school will not be the same way that we present it to high school. So our level of learning and the things that we're willing to receive grows as we get older. So we've really tried to take that into consideration when making this curriculum. Hopefully that helps answer your question. If not, please let me know.
Are you talking about how you could do things differently, like if you're seeing the same group of kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so like I'll have kids that will be in like kindergarten, first, second, they're all different, and I'll do it. I have them every summer. So if I have them, if I do it this summer and then have them next summer, the kids that I saw in 4th grade, do I do the same thing again in 5th grade and then just kind of change it as they get, kind of just change it to them? Or are there different activities that you guys have implemented in there?
So I see what you're saying. I guess that would be something different to look at in terms of some supplemental things that you can switch out. We personally, when we do our programming, we typically pull from the same things. And I mean, you'll get the occasional, like, oh, I remember this, or we've done this before. However, I think the way that they receive things when they're in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then, you know, if this is something where they're doing in the summer, I would hope it wouldn't feel too familiar. Like I would hope, I think you'd be able to still repeat the same like middle school cycle without it being too, like, I don't know that it's gonna feel very repetitive. Like if they're just doing this the one time, especially 6th graders, I think it would still feel likely new to them, even if you did it that summer when they're in 7th grade. But I think we could definitely look into some supplemental materials so that you're able to at least switch some things out. So like videos or activities. So keeping like the lesson structure the same, but being able to offer up some different, like I said, videos and activities so that it feels a little bit fresher. So that's a great point. Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. Yes, you are welcome. All right, we are going to move on. All right. So this is lesson 8 and the final lesson in the middle school curriculum. So this one again is structured to be more age appropriate. Obviously, we wouldn't talk about this specific topic for elementary age groups, but as we're getting into older middle school, having these specific types of conversations definitely can drive discussion and also drive discussion in their favor from the sense of getting their perspective on the world and the world that they're seeing and perceiving. Just a little disclaimer, this lesson may be a sensitive subject to the youth you work with. So please be mindful of the maturity level that you have in your class versus the actual age. Scaffold accordingly to what you know your students will, that they will react well to, and reinforce that this is a safe and respectful space. So again, going back to that wall of your group guidelines, creating a safe space where they can think, say, feel safe to say anything they do, act how they will. Keeping that as a reminder, especially for the lessons like this, can be very beneficial to them.
You can always encourage that they think of a coping skill that they can, already have brought to the forefront of their brains, that they can utilize as they're going through this. If anything feels triggering or they need like a mental break from it, you can always encourage them to go take a space break or something like that if need be.
So the way we do this lesson, we piloted this, we always start with an open-ended question or open discussion about these specific terms. So asking them what their experience or what their current knowledge is on social inequality, discrimination, racism, just to kind of gauge where they're at currently and what you can go with and from there. So we give you the definitions: social inequality, the existence of unequal opportunities and rewards for different social positions or statuses within a group or society. Discrimination, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories or of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, sex, or age. And racism, the prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people based on their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. So again, going back to that open, safe space, creating space for these students, especially in the Roanoke Valley, we found that being more inclusive with our language and what we're bringing to the table or what curriculum we're bringing them is definitely more beneficial than just being standard to fit just one. We're trying to fit all. Everyone's experiences are important, and we want to validate those experiences. This video we have attached for this specific lesson, it depicts societal privileges that can be capitalized upon that may not be available to other people. So I put privileges in quotation. I know that's sometimes a loaded word, but in this instance, we do see them as privileges. An example from the video would be if you come from a two-parent household or your parents are still married together, living in the same house, that might be a privilege to some people. It may not be a privilege to you if you're in that situation, but to some people, that might be a privilege to them, which can be capitalized on.
In this video, basically shows a group of students kind of lined up, and then there's like a coach or somebody, and so it's trying to get to like the finish line. But then the coach will start calling out things like, take a step forward, as Hannah said, if your parents are still married, living in the same household, things like that. So it's a way to show that how not everyone is going to make it to the finish line because of the different circumstances that our youth are facing in their everyday life.
And when we piloted this, I had a really good reaction from this lesson. The youth that I worked with, I had to scaffold this lesson because I was working with students with ID. So I had to be very careful with my language and how I presented this information, but I received great feedback from it. So I tried to term this in a way where it wasn't inequality per se, but saying that others might have like a head start in life. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't run the race, right? So everyone deserves a chance to run that race. We all have a race to run. Instilling that message of, again, self-efficacy, self-advocacy, positive lens, always bringing it back to that.
How we can even if you weren't able to take a step forward necessarily when that coach called one thing, maybe there were other things that you could, so that there's a way where everyone, again, with yourself, that's why we start building those self-efficacy and self-advocacy topics, even in the elementary school. It's a way to always help protect that hope. Remember, we went back to protecting that hope and the big dream so that, they can make it to that finish line.
Trying to make sure we don't have any.
That wraps up the middle school curriculum. Any questions before we move on to high school? Can everyone still hear us okay?
We got chat. This is one of my favorite activities to do with adults too. Yes, so this can definitely be scaffold to work with older adults. Obviously, you know the adults you're working with, you know how to gauge the room and the dynamics. So yes, it would be a great lesson for adults as well. Anything else before I move on to high school? Anything we're confused about? Anything we need to reiterate? Right.
Okay, so we'll move on to high school. So we've got week 1 here. There's an introduction. The intended purpose for this is to build on the foundation of becoming a well-rounded individual for yourself, and then how you can contribute that to positive choices, positive contributions to your community. So with high schoolers, I really stress the importance of creating your safe space. The high school lessons will just kind of get going. So you want to, right off the bat, have some type of way where you're setting your group guidelines, expectations, how you can create a safe space for your group. So again, you know, we typically will have our poster board paper and Sharpies. One of the things that we like to do with, and you can do this with middle school as well, but especially with the high school students, is we'll have the discussion where we kind of talk about like group rules or group guidelines, how we're creating a safe space. And then when we're done writing their responses on our poster board, we invite them to come up and initial it. So that way it's just kind of a nice solid way where they're, you know, committing themselves to having everyone work together for that to be a safe space for when they come to group.
And one thing we like to do is we sign it ourselves too. That just shows them that these guidelines aren't just something like a standard that we're holding them to. Like we're also holding ourselves to the same standard every time we enter the room, every time we enter the class, wherever you're having that group setting. Everyone is held accountable for the way we're acting, what we're saying, and how we're feeling and how we project. Okay. So when we go into the safe space, there is a resource available for you. You don't have to use the exact layout. It's just a visual representation of what it should look like or could look like. So whenever we're thinking about a safe space, again, you know your students, you know them the best, you know how to talk to them, you know what language to use. So really understanding what that safe space means to you and for your students or the groups that you're working with. Create the list together, and then you'll have it posted for every class session, hopefully, if you have that room, that space.
Again, I think we talked about this before, if you know, if you're able to come to the same setting each time and you are able to have that piece of paper, that poster board up, it's a great way to refer back to it when you're managing group behaviors and things like that. Or it's just a great thing to reference like at the start of your more sensitive subject lessons, you know, as you're kind of giving your introduction on what you'll be talking about that day. It's great to be able to visually reference, you know, please remember that this is our safe space. These are all our agreements and expectations that we've all agreed to be keep an open mind and open heart, and be respectful of one another and our different perspectives and opinions and experiences. So part of this introduction, so again, you want to encourage them to give their ideas for what they want their safe space to look like. You do want to make sure that you're highlighting things like being respectful, open-minded. You do always want to encourage that everybody has the right to pass. So you're always encouraging that nobody is forced, like while we encourage participation, nobody is forced to answer anything that they don't feel comfortable answering. So everyone's got that right to pass. You definitely want to highlight privacy and confidentiality. So it's typically, you know, what we say in our group space stays in this group space. Again, with the caveat of if someone is mentioning something that has to do with harm to self, harm to others, and or things like that, that you know, you would have to report that just to keep the, you know, the safety of that person as the highest priority. So you do always want to make sure you're mentioning that. There's a nice point in here about having this, I think in the lesson, it's titled as kind of self-grace.
Mm.
But I think that's most self-grace and giving grace. So just kind of recognizing like best intent. So we might say something that makes somebody else feel, it might be hurtful to somebody else, but just kind of holding space where we're trying to recognize best intent, where we're not meaning to hurt, like we're not trying to intentionally hurt anybody's feelings. We are all trying to be respectful and just navigate our own different opinions. Okay, so that is the first lesson. Lesson 2, we kind of go into learning about the brain and how that applies like to high school age teens. So that talks a lot about the effects that trauma and mental disorders may have on the brain. This is why I'm saying you're kind of right out of the gate going into some things that can be sensitive to some people. So highlighting right away that it can be a sensitive subject. So you want to make sure to remind them of their group guidelines, and then reiterating their self-advocacy, fostering safe spaces. So this topic does cover that it lists different types of abuse and those the effects that those different kinds of abuse can have on brain development. So you are saying things such as sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental, emotional abuse, cyber abuse, and neglect. So again, just for lesson 2, that can feel really heavy for like if this is a brand new group and you haven't really developed those your group dynamics yet. So again, it's really making sure that as you're scaffolding this, you're always referencing your safe space. There's numbers provided, hotlines and helplines if anybody is experiencing any of these things. So you do want to make sure that you provide that information while you're doing this group, so that they have an opportunity to reach out while also remaining anonymous if you don't have that rapport at that time with your with each group individual. And then, so it's always linking it back to why are we talking about this? So you're always linking it back to the message of how these different types of experiences, what the effect has on the individual development of the brain.
In addition to presenting, what are your thoughts on presenting this curriculum to parents or adults that work with children of these age groups? That is a great question.
That's a great question. I think that's a great idea. I think this material has a lot of information in it that would be good for like a parent, guardian, caregiver to have in mind. I think the videos that were selected, it's a great way for a caregiver or family member to be able to kind of see how their youth is experiencing things. So I think that's a great idea.
All right, any questions about lessons 1 or 2 before we move on to lesson 3? All right.
All right, so lesson 3, we talk about self-regulation, again, applying this in a way that's developmentally appropriate for teenagers. So the YouTube videos that were selected here, it shows us the perspective of an adult as well as a student when practicing self-regulation. So I believe one of it shows a teacher with her class.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows how the teacher structures self-regulation within a classroom environment. It shows how she models her emotion regulation, even when things are getting stressful within her classroom. So it shows how she's always modeling that for her class. And then, so when you're talking about this, you want to reinforce again a safe space, as well as that the individuals in your groups, that they have autonomy for themselves within the classroom. So if they are experiencing emotions, like when they're thinking about this for themselves within their own classroom environment, how they can, when we say autonomy, we mean like how they can be in control of their bodies, their emotions, and regulate themselves within their own classroom experiences. The other YouTube video that we had, it showed how this one school system was really trying to think outside the box of how they could create and foster safe spaces for their students. So they had specific like calm down hallway areas. There was also an opportunity where if two high schoolers were all like kind of leading to the way where they could get into an altercation, there was a room where they could go to with an adult mediator that would help them talk out whatever grievance or difference was going on like at that time within the moment, instead of letting, you know, kind of the gossip channel take over and twist things, make things worse potentially. So they created this space where, you know, in the moment, these high schoolers could go into this room with an adult mediator and talk things through. So everyone's feelings are validated. They can process through and talk about what an outcome could be that's making healthy choices and not kind of like flipping the lid and going to either verbal or physical aggression. So after showing that, it's really interesting. You want to have that open discussion with your own group to ask like what they thought of that, if they thought it would be something that they would find helpful or beneficial within their own school environment. If they could see kind of their school providers being able to offer spaces like that for them.
Nope, I think that's all for lesson 3.
Okay.
Lesson 4 goes into relationships. So we really dive into healthy versus unhealthy relationships. So once you've already covered the basis of the different types of relationships, whether that's romantic, familial, platonic, now we're going to look at what makes them healthy, what makes them unhealthy, love languages, and the differences. So for this lesson, we start with a whiteboard, a chalkboard, or the chart paper does just as well. So the diagram is also provided. It's on page 70 and 71 of the information packet that you have, or the curriculum packet.
So you would be creating, so we have it when you're looking at the packet on page 70, 71, we have it filled out. What you would be creating is this diagram where, I mean, however you want to make your diagram, but you're having your headers of healthy needs, unhealthy needs, healthy ones, unhealthy ones, and then there's both and other down there at the bottom. But so we have things filled in, but this is just to kind of help get the conversation going. So if when you create it with your headers of healthy needs and unhealthy needs, and you're asking, you're asking your teen group, hey, what do you think some healthy needs in a relationship are? Nobody answers. So we just have what you'll see filled in here are just the suggestions that you can throw out to help kind of get that conversation started. You will find as you're going through most of the lessons in the high school curriculum, we really want it to be driven by the team. So you really want to encourage them. Hopefully, you're continuing to work on building rapport and creating that safe space, but you really want to encourage them to give their thoughts, opinions, perspectives. So the things that are filled in this chart are just, in case it's kind of crickets when you first start, just to help kind of get the conversation started.
All right. So, and then there's also a video for this one as well. So this one is just related to healthy versus unhealthy relationships. And it gives them a visualization of what each can look like. And then again, as Megan said, have it student-led in discussion. Of course, you can ask open-ended questions or questions for clarity, but really have them give their perspective, why they think that way, what made them think that way, and help drive the conversation with them.
When you're wrapping up this lesson, just because you're part of it is you're encouraging them to talk about, the other part of the diagram. So you do want to always, when you're wrapping up this lesson, just to make sure, you want to check in with how everybody is feeling, how it felt to talk about things like that. If anyone is experiencing some of maybe the unhealthy aspects of a relationship. You want to make sure you're always leaving them with, does everyone have a trusted adult that they feel like they can talk to if they need to. So when you're wrapping this up, you do want to make sure that you're leaving them with something like that. If they respond that they don't have anybody, you can say, we can be here for you as well, or help link you to somebody who you could talk to. If you're in a school setting, you can always refer back to their guidance counselor, things like that. So just make sure you're wrapping it up in that way. All right, so lesson 5 is empathy and conflict resolution. We'll take a little bit of a further look into this. So in this lesson, the main objective is to cover what empathy and sympathy are, how to use them, as well as how to resolve conflicts. So let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and play. We're gonna go ahead and play this video for you all.
Oh, not the commercial.
Sorry about the ad.
Oh, sorry about that ad. Right. Let's look at the chat here. Impactful.
Yes, we really love this video. I like that it shows, in the video, it shows, you know, there's high school teens in there as well, but it also shows some of the school administration in there. So I think especially for teens, I like how it, you know, it could hopefully be a way for them to help to see that even adults, you know, even their school administrators can be going through things, and that, you know, really underneath it all, we are really all linked by the various hardships that we're going through. And I think when we piloted this, it led to some pretty meaningful discussions on empathy and sympathy, and how we can practice showing kindness, or at least patience, when interacting with our peers and even with adults in our lives. So we talk about, further on in this lesson, we go into what is empathy and sympathy, and kind of gauge where they're at with what they have as definitions for those. We talk about the different types of empathy that there are, such as cognitive, emotional, and compassionate empathy. So again, it's kind of a team-led discussion. You know, you have some scenario cards as well in this activity. So asking how situations could have been handled, how you could show empathy and sympathy in these instances. Again, while knowing that, as Ken mentioned before, with the middle school scenario card, that, you know, if it's a situation that they haven't been through, just kind of encouraging them to think, you know, especially based after seeing that video, how could you respond to a situation like this in a way where you're showing empathy or sympathy. Okay. And then I'm being mindful of the time. I'm sorry, I'll try to kind of in a quicker pace go through the remaining high school lessons, but lesson 6, we get into stereotypes and biases. So the purpose of that lesson is to discuss stereotypes and biases. Again, that can definitely be a sensitive subject. So always referring back to your group guidelines, encouraging the safe and open space. Again, we're really having it be a student-led discussion based on their current knowledge of what these topics are. And then, so again, just to reiterate, as with most lessons within the high school curriculum, we want to encourage the student-led discussion while also scaffolding and supporting when necessary. Scaffolding, I feel like, is a term we've been using. I mostly just mean that for you as a facilitator, like when you're scaffolding, you're kind of, that's going to be how you're managing your group dynamics and like the flow of your group. Okay, so there's a YouTube video again here. That video depicts the different stereotypes and biases that may be heard throughout everyday life.
Okay.
And then moving on to our lesson 7, that's about social justice or social injustice. This utilizes a tool.
Slido or Slido, however, you know.
I'm not sure. We're not sure how you say it.
Tomato.
Yes, tomato, tomato. It is free for anyone who uses it. You do have to, it does require you setting up an account beforehand. So again, just when you're preparing for your group, go ahead and get that taken care of beforehand. But it is free. There are different ways to facilitate on that website. For this lesson, we use the word cloud option. Worth noting, profanity filters can be turned on, as well as a word count limit. But basically what you're going to do is you would have them pull this up either on a laptop or cell phone. You know, you would need to have some internet capability. So if people don't have that, ask them to partner with somebody who does. And so we would ask them, like, what does social justice mean to you? And so for the word cloud, they go in and they type, you know, the words that that comes to their minds when they hear this term. And then, you know, everybody does that. When they're done, it creates this whole like word cloud, and it leads to a really nice discussion. So you go through and do that again with what does social injustice mean to them, and have them fill out that word cloud.
And as you go on with this lesson, once you get the curriculum packet, you'll see more of what I'm talking about. But we give you some more like talking points that you could add in, and just in case there is no discussion to be had, or they're just not sure what discussion to make out of this. So we give you talking points like voting rights, climate justice, healthcare, refugee crisis, racial injustice, gender inequality, income gap, gun violence, and hunger and food insecurity. So all of those kind of go into this social injustice category. Now it's up to you to gauge your classroom or the people that you are working with to best have these certain discussions. So these you can really pick and pull and choose which one would best fit your youth or the adults that you work with if you choose to. And then we also get into some biases or other social justice topics such as racism, liberation, equality, sexism, ageism, and ableism. So all of those are terms that we have really deemed very important for the youth to know, especially as we're getting into the high school age. If you're working with seniors as well, they're going to be going into college. They're going to have a lot of autonomy. Yes. So any career path or decision that they make, they're going to have a lot of autonomy and a lot of decisions to make. So we really want to help them make more informed decisions. So keeping in mind of, we're not trying to tell them
We're not teaching them what to think, but just helping them learn how to think.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to our lesson 8. So this one is regarding community, the school to prison pipeline. Of course, this lesson can and likely will be a highly sensitive subject for students and the educator alike. Be sure to practice self-advocacy, self-regulation, advocacy for your students. I would just note, I think for this one especially, it's important for you as a facilitator, for whoever's facilitating, to review this lesson beforehand. So just to do some group prep. So you probably want to go ahead and watch the YouTube videos that we have on here. You want to watch them yourself before showing it to the group, just to decide which, if you want to show both of them, if you just want to show the first one. The first video highlights educational experiences of our youth and how that can show just kind of today what they go through. The second video, I will say, trigger warning, it does show brutality against students by school resource officers. We realize this is definitely an uncomfortable and can be triggering thing to watch and a conversation to have. So again, this is really part of your facilitation prep where you're watching these beforehand. If you choose to just show the first video, and not the second one, you're gonna, at this point by lesson 8, you would hopefully know your group dynamics and you would know your group best on what's gonna go over well for them and what's gonna be what you can get out of it for your best discussion.
Okay. And then we move on to lesson 9, kind of to try to wrap everything nicely in a bow. Thank you, Mackenzie. I'm glad you were able to be here for the major chunk of it.
Yes, we are wrapping up in just a few minutes. I realize
yes.
we're going over, so just bear with us for maybe 5 more minutes. We appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
But yes, lesson 9, so self-efficacy. Again, this is going to be diving into a deeper sense of self-efficacy, what that means and what it can do for youth, what that looks like in terms of, your teens at this older age that they're going to be at. So it's, they're going to reflect on their current beliefs that they have about themselves. So what is their current level of knowledge for self-efficacy? And then this is where we kind of introduce our SMART goal template. So by SMART goal, it's SMART. So for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-sensitive goals. So especially when you've got your older teens, so 11th to 12th graders, it's a great way for them to start for their, forward thinking selves for their future. Again, always linking it back to just protecting, this hope that they have for themselves, whatever dreams, goals, let's turn those dreams into goals. So following the SMART goal template, really protecting and nurturing those dreams that they have for themselves and how we can turn that into a reality, into making these goals. So that's just a nice one to kind of wrap up there, especially with the heavier, relationships, stereotypes, social injustice. It's kind of a more gentle and positive topic to end on. We do have, there is a week 10, if you're able to, it's kind of the celebration. So it's mostly just meant as a reflection, a review, a wrap up, referring back to your safe space, how everyone kind of upheld that safe space for each other throughout the time frame that you completed this curriculum. It's a great way to reflect as a group as well as just kind of their own inner reflection. You'll know your group best, so if you have something else where you can kind of consider a celebration, feel free to explore that for what your group best is. Sometimes it's bringing in like a small snack or something like that. And then maybe while they're eating, just kind of a discussion to keep in mind is you can always ask them like, what is, what did they like best? What's one thing they took away from it? Things like that. And you can also say like, what didn't you like? Like what worked well, what didn't work, what do you take away from this? So that, their feedback is always crucial because they're the ones actually going through and doing it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that kind of wraps everything up. I know that was a lot of us talking at you with lots of different things. So any overall thoughts, concerns, questions?
This is Becca. I'm just excited to see like all these resources in one place because so many times and that's why we wanted to create kind of an individualized curriculum because a lot of these resources we've seen in other curricula or like the YouTube links or things like that. And I just love that they're all in one space to make it easier for people because we talked about in our education committee that there's no one curricula, that's perfect, obviously. And that's why we like to pick and choose from different things. But I think you guys have so many great aspects in here. So I just want to thank you guys so much for all the hard work you put into this. I can't wait to dive into it in more depth. So thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for these ladies?
Yes, this is Angela. Are we doing like a marketing plan or kickoff or anything where like we're making this humongous so that everybody can join in at the same time?
That's a great idea, Angela. That's something that maybe we can talk about. And this is just the first time that we've kind of like revealed it to our community partners. So that's maybe something that we can do as a next step.
That'd be great.
Sorry, I'm driving. That works out. That sounds good. And I'll be willing to help any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you guys want me to show the curricula just really quick so you guys can see kind of a snapshot of it? So if you guys want to stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine. Yeah, so definitely. So we are recording this right now. So you guys can show the recording to your team and then also the curricula, obviously, once we send it out to you. So let me show you. Some pieces of it. So it's a very extensive. I'm going to go up here to the first page. Can everybody see that okay? Yeah. Okay, so you'll see here that here kind of in the table of contents, you'll see everything laid out with the age groups and with each lesson. And as Megan and Hannah said, 8 lessons for most age groups, but we go through 10 for that high school curricula. And then the way that they have laid it out is just wonderful because you can just click on these links that are here in this active document. And then all the activities that are associated with it are embedded in it as well. So you can see here some examples of some of the activities and that hand model of the brain. So it's just laid out in a very, very easy way for you guys to digest. And we really want your feedback. So since this is kind of just a new initiative for us, that feedback is really important for all of us and to know how you're using it. And I think the next step will be for us to begin to develop some type of evaluation for this. I think you guys did an evaluation at Family Services, right, with your kiddos or the facilitators? Oh, wait, I can't hear you, Megan.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
I think with the facilitators, yes.
Mhm.
Haven't created like a post survey or anything just yet for the youth to actually, give a response to.
Mhm. Yeah,
Other
so
than-
we'll build on that. Awesome. Okay. Welcome, Cynthia. Okay, so I will be sending this out to you all. What other questions? I'm going to stop sharing. What other questions do you all have for Megan and Hannah? Anything else? Well, I know that when you get into it, I know that when I get into it, I'll probably be like, oh, what is that? Or get some more clarification. So just please round back with me and I can reach out to Megan and Hannah and get some feedback as well. And this is an ongoing process. This is just the first step, of this longer kind of journey. And so we all have probably a lot to learn about how best to implement this and what it's going to look like practically. Each session, you guys said, was 30 to 45 minutes, right? 30 to 45 minutes for each session, and then 8 sessions. Oh, thank you, Megan, for putting your email in there. And then also, if you are integrating it with other things like, Michelle, when you were talking earlier, it was making me think, I don't know if I used to co-teach or co-coach Girls on the Run. And the Girls on the Run kind of curricula works in a similar way. So when we did the Girls on the Run program in schools, what we would do is the girls would like run a lap, and then we do like one part of the lesson, and then they'd run another lap and we do another part of the lesson. It was really, really cool to be able to integrate like the physical piece with the social emotional learning piece. And the girls really responded well to that, especially because it was after school and they wanted to be active and things like that. So I was kind of thinking, as far as dancing, how could you integrate those two things together? And we want you guys to be flexible with this curricula and make it work for you and the students that you serve. So it has to work for you in order for us to have that impact that we're looking for. So any other questions? No? Okay, we'll spread the word. Once we send this curricula to you, you guys are in all different types of agencies, across the valley. Just, spread the word to the individuals who you work with in your organization that will be helping to deliver this content, and just let us know what you think. And then we'll round back with each other at some point and work on evaluations and things like that. So we so appreciate all the hard work that Megan and Hannah and their team has done over at Family Services. So thank you all so much for being our partner in this endeavor. And thank you all so much for joining us, everybody else on the call.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
We appreciate
Bye,
you all.
everybody.
Thanks, Becca.